The memorial plan for conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Tight security today around the State Farm Stadium in the Phoenix area, where President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance will be among tens of thousands of people to pay their respects to Kirk. He was assassinated more than a week ago in Utah while speaking with college students. The man accused of killing him is 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who authorities said left a note for his roommate saying he had a chance to kill Kirk and he took it. Prosecutors say when the roommate asked why he did it, Robinson said in a text, quote, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out." While millions of people have expressed sorrow over Kirk's murder, others have had opposite views, among them some teachers in Texas. The Texas Education Agency says it's received nearly 300 complaints against teachers, and it's investigating all of them. The agency's commissioner, Mike Morath, sent a letter to school districts saying, quote, "In response to such posts, I am referring all documentation of educators that have proliferated such vile content to TEA's Education Investigations Division. Such posts could constitute a violation of the educator's code of ethics, and each instance will be thoroughly reviewed to determine whether sanctionable conduct has occurred, and staff will investigate accordingly." Then, in a statement to the media, Morath appears to have tempered his comments, saying, quote, "While all educators are held to a high standard of professionalism, there is a difference between comments made in poor taste and those that call for and incite further violence, the latter of which is clearly unacceptable. If teachers are found to have called for and incited further violence, they could have their certification suspended and no longer be able to teach in a public school." Republican State Senator Mays Middleton of Galveston said on social media that teachers who cheered on Kirk's death should be fired. We spoke with him early last week.
I talked to Commissioner Morath about this, and I've got zero tolerance for educators that are cheering on murder of somebody, anybody. It doesn't matter if it's Charlie Kirk or anyone else. It is wrong. I've seen it across social media. It is in countless districts. It's actually in some districts within my Senate district, Goose Creek ISD. We have some examples there. And look, at the end of the day, anyone that did that needs to be terminated immediately. They need to have their certification rejected, where they're not allowed to teach again, because frankly, they have forfeited their right to educate our children or be part of education in any way of the next generation. And we need to be harsh in the accountability for this and make sure that we've got zero tolerance for those that are cheering on this assassination and this murder, and just some of the sick things that are said, if somehow he deserved it or he had it coming. It's things that turn your stomach, and anyone that would ever say that has no right to be around our children, much less in our K-12 schools.
Now, Commissioner Morath has clarified what this investigation is. He said that there's a difference between something that's distasteful versus something where you're inciting violence, and he made that distinction. So is that really what these investigations are going to come down to?
Well, look, there's been up to 200 complaints so far. I'm glad to see that this reporting system is working. I've talked to many constituents and many voters around the state, encouraged them to report this behavior through the TEA, and we're seeing that happen. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how due process is supposed to work. But again, if there's reason to believe, and we can show that any educator in this state, whether they're in the classroom or not, whether they're an administrator or work for a university or work for a K-12 ISD, it doesn't matter where they are in the education system. They need to be held firmly accountable and fired immediately. It's wrong, and we got to make sure that we send this strong message to this next generation as well, that we will not put up with this. This is not okay. And this is a lesson we need to teach to our children as well. Thou shalt not kill. That's in the 10 Commandments that we're going to put in the classroom in every Texas school here, starting in September, actually, is when that law went into effect. And I mean, these are basic biblical truths that we need to teach that next generation, basic moral truths. And those that are preaching the opposite of this culture of death, and somehow murder is justified just because you're conservative, or murder is justified just because you disagree with someone's political beliefs, it is wrong, and we've got to end this now.
What do you say to those who say, look, freedom of speech?
Well, you're free to say that someone should be killed because of their political beliefs, but we're free to fire you because of that.
But Democratic State Representative Lauren Ashley Simmons of Houston criticized Morath's letter to school districts in an interview with us.
I felt like it was an inappropriate use of his authority in this matter. Anytime a tragedy like this takes place, where there's going to be, just a highly sensitive and polarized response that falls along a political spectrum, I think it would be really his job and in his best interest to do his best to turn the temperature down. And you know what, Jack, I have to, also offer I'm a former union representative. I used to do this for a living. I represented teachers, and sometimes there would be instances where teachers would, make comments on Facebook, and they weren't necessarily violent, they weren't incendiary, they may be crass or inappropriate. And, we would have to make the case and say, look, this person is using their First Amendment rights that they're entitled to. They don't, that does not cut off because they're an employee of a school district. And, we would have to just be very honest about, like, yes, we can say that and admit that this is inappropriate. This may be uncomfortable, but it doesn't warrant a heavy handed response. And I do believe that in this instance, that's just kind of where my line of thinking was when we, decided to draft that letter. And I stand by that decision to do that.
And one thing that we saw, the TEA commissioner in a statement to the news media on this week said there is a difference between comments made in poor taste and those that call for and incite further violence, the latter of which is clearly unacceptable. So what do you make of all this?
And see, I can respect him trying to clarify, and maybe he should have led with that because, of course, we don't want teachers in classrooms who are inciting violence. But again, there is a difference between language that we find crass or inappropriate in the expression of opinions that may not align with his political beliefs.
It's still up to the individual school districts to make the decision on whether to fire a teacher. But you are saying that if there is a determination that a teacher was inciting further violence, that they should be fired.
I believe that, due process should take place. And I do believe that it is the teacher has the right to defend themselves and that language should be addressed. I do think that the school board or whatever process is in place by the school board should allow for that due process to take place. And ultimately, the decision that needs to be made should be made.